afternoon. Oh.
Or good morning.
Or good morning, wherever you are. We're here to build secure apps.
We are here to build secure apps. And you're Yuri?
You're Justin.
We're both solutions architects working at Amazon Web Services for our government,
education,
nonprofit, and healthcare customers.
Yes, this is episode 3 of 5.
It is.
After today, only 2 more weeks left. Sad days.
I'm sure we will be much missed.
Yeah, I'm sure. As always, a few housekeeping things. There is a blog that goes through all the content we will review here today. That blog link is going into the chat associated with this Twitch episode right now, in whatever direction it is on your screen.
I don't actually know where it is.
I don't know. Let's go through introductions in our lounge.
Hi everyone, Mike Colson, Solutions Architect Manager with the DoD team.
Hi, I'm Ted. I'm a Solutions Architect on the public sector side here, and I'll be in the chat looking at your questions, answering them, and passing them on up here.
Hi, I'm Sai. I'm with AWS Professional Services. I'm a consultant. I will also be in the chat trying to answer your questions or pass along to Justin and Yuri.
So just in case you didn't hear all of that stuff about questions, please do ask us your questions. We love that type of engagement.
That's why we're on Twitch.
That is. All right, so quick recap. Well, this week we're talking about actually securing applications.
We are. Intra-application security.
Yes, the code. The code needs security as well.
Yes.
Last week we covered security of your infrastructure.
We did, and we had an unanswered question. Do we want to reiterate that answered question?
Yes. So the question was from Mike IEEE. Hey guys, this is a little long question. Users want to use CloudFormation templates to launch their application, but generally they end up asking for full rights to execute, update, or delete, etc. Is there any tool available with AWS that can walk through the CloudFormation script and determine which roles/privileges are required to execute the template?
So in the chat, I think we're going to post this right now. There's a link to a blog that talks about best practices for using identity and access management with our CloudFormation service.
I am, if you really like our acronyms.
Don't we all love acronyms?
Yes.
However, there's a couple of ways that you can tackle this. Instead of giving them the permissions that are needed to launch the stack that you want to do from a CloudFormation perspective, there is actually a service we have called AWS Service Catalog. Service Catalog allows you to deploy CloudFormation templates as products. And those products then can be launched by people with access to Service Catalog and only Service Catalog.
Yeah.
So you can restrict people's application, you can restrict people's IAM accesses and privileges to just the applications that they need to launch.
Yeah, so let's think about a real world example. So let's say in your organization, in your agency, you were dealing with a lot of 3-tier applications, which tend to almost always have a load balancer, an auto-scaling group that has lots of EC2 instances. If I had a piece of glass here, I'd be drawing on it right now. And it has a database over here. So the idea is you see this stack very commonly.
Right.
Now, let's say I'm a developer. I am developing a new web application. Sure. Again, 3-tier architecture is what I need. Do I need permission to, if let's say there was a CloudFormation template that described everything I need in my stack, do I need permissions to create all of this just to launch that CloudFormation template?
You don't. What you need permissions to is to Service Catalog. And that will allow you to, and like our other IAM permissions, they're granular to launch or to terminate the stack itself.
So the nice thing is you can now separate out the operations side of what you need. So everyone who needs to create these standard templates, they can have one set of permissions versus the people who are deploying and creating these stacks. That can have those people can have a different set of permissions. So great question. It's not you're right. It's not just a short answer, but that's why we're trying to give you as much information as possible. So that goes into just a brief summary of what we covered last week. So we were talking about security of our infrastructure, which included security at transit.
We did. Security at rest.
Security prevention.
And security detection.
Yes, but that was all mostly for your infrastructure.
Yes.
But your code, can things go wrong with your code?
I mean, probably not, right? We're fine.
We're totally perfectly fine. Our code wouldn't be doing things like, let's say, interfacing with our databases and needing passwords and needing API keys to other third-party APIs or something along those lines. Those things couldn't ever be exploited in any way, shape, or form, right?
No.
No. Our users, they couldn't be doing things like inputting things into form fields for a web application, and they couldn't take advantage of that and putting in bad stuff into those form fields.
I mean, I try to only have good users.
Oh, right, good users. I
Right.
always try to have the good users
Yeah.
as well.
That's helpful.
So the idea is that maybe potentially there are some vulnerabilities that we should discuss here.
We should probably talk about that.
Yeah.
And some of this might sound familiar, and that's okay if it's a bit of a refresher. We're going to point you to some great resources as we talk about this.
Yes.
But let's dig in.
Okay, so the most common one, we already slightly touched on this, which is that idea of disclosing passwords, disclosing API keys. So that is one major area. We have to think about configuration. We have to think about privacy and security and encryption
We do.
of that information, and who has access to look at those passwords, to look at those API keys.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the configuration in the code, and we can talk a little bit about that. We'll go into the demo a bit later.
Yes.
But we've touched on Secrets Manager and Parameter Store several times. We will be doing a demo of Secrets Manager and Parameter Store here as we move through the demo.
Yeah. So other types of exploits that can happen is, let's say you're building a web application. The nice thing is, we're going to go through, I will fully warn you, there's a lot of things to pay attention to, but the good thing is we are going to give you two major lists of security exploits to pay attention to, in addition to that security and passwords that we just mentioned. So one of them is there is the Open Web Application Security Project.
And let's pull up OWASP right here. I think we've touched on this once before in episode 1.
Yeah.
But we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the OWASP site.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to pull up the top 10 cheat sheet.
Yeah.
If you don't have this bookmarked, which it appears I do not in this browser, so I'm just going to go ahead and bookmark that.
That's useful. So the idea is that the OWASP top 10 list, this is the minimum set of things that you should pay attention to for your web application. Go there, pay attention to it. So if a security personnel comes to you and they say something along the lines of, how are you thinking about SQL injection? You might be able to answer this after you go through this talk and secure yourself down. So you just want to know these basic concepts so you can respond to how you are remedying it, how you are preventing any of these vulnerabilities. We also have the common vulnerabilities and exposure list.
Ooh, terrifying.
CVE. So if you ever hear CVE or OWASP,
Right.
those are the fun acronyms that we're talking about here.
I like their logo,
Yes.
the WASP. So, CVE is hosted at cve.mida.org. We'll put the link in the Chime Twitch chat room. And see here, you can just download a full list of the CVEs. I'm going to just go ahead and open an HTML version of this, and maybe it'll break my browser, maybe it won't.
Yeah, I will fully warn you that, so OWASP's top 10, you can do it with all of your fingers. CVE, the list that you are about to download, and Justin is apparently attempting to do right now,
Not.
it is quite lengthy. It took me a while to download it as an Excel spreadsheet. But what we're going to do is go through how can you test for everything in the CVE in one fell swoop, as opposed to having to read this whole entire long list of every single exploit that can happen in things like your OS or a specific library or otherwise. So the idea here is based off of the construction of your web application, based off of things like third-party libraries that you use, or the operating system that you are installing your application onto, there are potentials for exploits.
So if I write everything myself from the ground up and nobody knows what I'm using, it's secure.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It does sound like a bit of work, yes.
That seems to get get far off in a direction that we normally don't encourage.
Wait, you can reuse code?
We can. Libraries tend to be good. They tend to move you forward. But at the same time, they're just things that we should pay attention to.
There are.
So let's actually step through this in a little bit more, in a much easier way. So let's talk about things like some common exploits in terms of the inputs to your application. So this
Sure.
is the idea of, let's say we have a web application. It has a registration page.
Sure.
It has form fields for your first name, last name, email, maybe address.
Sure. Why not?
Yep.
Knowing where people are, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So, so what can happen with a simple form field in your application?
Oh, it's pretty easy. I take the data from my form field and I just throw it in the database, right?
Yeah, you create something like an insert statement into
Yeah.
your users table.
Put it in there.
Take exactly the string verbatim from what your user has passed in.
That sounds the easy way to do it.
Yeah. What happens if they were to do any sort of magical escape characters and then do something like drop table?
I should just say no bad users.
Oh, right. We have our saintly users.
Right.
Yes.
Because I don't want that table dropped.
Yeah. So the idea is
I like that table.
so this is what's called SQL injection, or just injection in general,
Right.
which is the idea that you can execute a command
Mm-hmm.
as an input, as a form input, as opposed to having data coming in there. So what are some common ways that we can think about mitigating
Is there
this
only
situation?
a way to map the data coming from the form to something else?
If only. So
Only. Is there anything that helps bridge that gap?
there's this term I heard once, object relational mapping, and that's a library. There's libraries per framework that you use. So,
Oh, great.
so if you're like Java, this would be like something like Hibernate. So if you ever hear ORM, object relational mapping, this is something where they get around having to create your own SQL statements where you're taking inputs and putting them in. Instead, it's creating SQL statements for you, mapping them to your tables in your database. And they are thinking about things like escape characters.
Characters can escape.
Characters can escape. It's the way out for every character.
Oh, good.
So yeah, so the nice thing is this is actually something we should just touch on in general.
We
is
should.
For every coding language out there,
Yep.
in general, if you are using a framework, and did we go over this already? If you're using a framework that it helps you out just
I
in
don't
general?
think we said that. Let's go with that. Frameworks are good. Rewriting everything from scratch is probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for every use case, certainly, but frameworks can really accelerate your building of cool stuff
Building and following of best practices.
and maybe getting through a security audit.
Yes, things along those lines. But in general, a lot of the frameworks out there, so if you were Ruby, it would be Ruby on Rails. If it was
Sure.
Python, it would be.
There's Django for one.
Yep. So the idea is a lot of them already include
Yes.
an ORM. So it will, as long as you're using the ORM, you are probably taking care of all of these SQL injection exploits already. So check mark there.
Done. All right.
Now outputs.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, your application, you're trying to communicate to a user. You are displaying something to your user's screen, it's appearing in a web browser.
Okay.
Your user trusts you.
That seems unlikely, but okay.
They think when they're communicating to your application, their information's only going there.
Well, that would probably be a good thing for my application to do.
Yeah, is there anything that could go wrong?
Probably not.
Justin's so trusting.
I am.
You are. You've got the best users. I want to be one of Justin's users.
Do. What about if people put JavaScript redirects in place?
Oh, yes.
How do I handle that?
So you mean like if, again, on my little registration page,
Yeah.
if there was some mysterious JavaScript that was reading form fields, taking that information and not just sending it to my application, but instead sending it to badplace.com?
That might be a real website. We should probably check before that. Yeah, badplace.com, sure.
Sorry, badplace.com. So, yes, there's that. There's also, what happens if there's JavaScript that's just there as a nuisance? And it was doing things like creating pop-ups and stuff like that.
No. Yeah, that seems like a problem. I
Yeah.
don't really want that. It's a bad experience.
Yeah, so things like worries about cross-site scripting, where you could get information from other websites, or your information can go to the wrong places.
We don't want that.
We don't want that type of thing. So again, there can be problems when you are trying to give an interface to your user.
Sure.
So the outputs from your web application, you
Yeah.
want to make sure that your user can trust it. There's also some exploits that can happen in your infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So things like, let's say you're hosted on EC2, but you're using a really old operating system that isn't patched.
That's not good.
No, that's not bad.
Who
That's,
let that happen?
yeah, I don't know who let that happen. So that's another thing that can go wrong. There's also the idea of processing, the idea that somebody might be able to take advantage of your application and actually execute commands within your environment.
Wow.
That's-
So deserialization, maybe,
Yes.
of memory?
Yeah, yeah.
That's not good.
That's not good either.
That's terrifying.
And then there is, even when your application is operating correctly, if you don't have authentication, like as a user, I'm registering myself, I'm putting in my email, I'm putting my address.
Sure.
Probably on the URL I have something like user123, here is your profile. Now if I were to do something and be able to look at user 124, 125, 126 and be able to see their information,
Well, then anybody could have my address.
that sounds like a great
sounds
way
like a
for
problem.
me. Sounds like a great way for me to develop a newsletter or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, so the idea of authentication, who is allowed to see the right information
At the right time.
on your website? So that's another thing to pay attention to.
That is.
Or a potential exploit.
I'm sure none of our viewers would ever do anything like that.
They never,
Good.
ever, ever, ever. So
All right, I'm
There's
gonna go find a different career. This is too much.
this means that we shouldn't code at all, because I'm
Yeah,
afraid.
it's too much. Let's pack it up. We're gonna call it a day. Give me my tinfoil hat, and I'm gonna go find the exit.
Okay. You know that doesn't actually protect us against anything.
I'm aware.
Like,
Yes.
I'm just,
It just looks cool.
Just making sure. But are there ways that our users, we can make their lives easier?
Well, we talked about code reuse a little bit, and,
Yep,
and using
libraries.
frameworks and using
And libraries and frameworks, yes. But
so-
we also mentioned that they can go wrong. Like in
They
the
can.
CVE, they do list old libraries that might have potential vulnerabilities, but at least they're listed. They're listed out there.
And I can usually I know the version of the library I'm working with. That's pretty easy to figure
Yeah.
out.
I think we should start giving them solutions.
Yeah, I think we've terrified them enough.
Yeah, okay, let's get to the solution. So let's start off with the first thing that we mentioned, which is that idea that even the configuration for your application, like the passwords,
Yep.
like the API keys, like the secrets, those maybe we should keep somewhere else
Secret.
other than the code. I mean, I personally love to create a Git repo
Yeah.
and then put all of I will make it a private repo, and I'm going to put all my passwords in
Sure.
there.
And I've got a demo of that. This is going to be great. I have this page. It's this right here. This is an access key and secret access key.
Yeah, so we should commit that, and it's a private repo, so we're totally good, right?
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be fine. We're not going to like do things like start working with developers all over the place. At some point, one of our developers, they decide that they actually want their Git history to be part of their profile of their commits, or anything along those lines.
This is why I work alone.
But don't worry, they'll just delete the configuration file before they make their repo public. Will
Right.
that be okay?
All good users, right?
Right. But the reason why we used a code repository was to have a history.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we mentioned this in at least one previous episode, is Git secrets. Let me pull up the page here. It's on github.com under AWS Labs, and it helps prevent you from committing secrets and credentials to Git repositories. And it does that by installing a webhook. And the install for this is pretty straightforward on Mac, Windows, Unix of your flavor choice, whatever you want to go
We
for.
accept it all.
If you use Homebrew on a Mac, it's brew install git-secrets. Pretty easy to install, but that doesn't actually do anything until you install the webhooks. in your repository, before you do that and think that you're protected, you need to make sure that that is configured. In fact, it actually has a warning here. You need to make sure that that is the case. So what does it actually look like when I try and scan something? So I've got this file
Yeah.
in a little repo that I'm going to run real quick. It's some file that I haven't indexed yet, because,
Oh, okay.
you know, why not? Oh, look, it found in these files, and it calls out one or more prohibited patterns. Now, there are some patterns that it has by default. AWS identity and security keys are one of them, but they're not the only one. And you can add your own patterns to this, which actually makes it very, very handy if you're working with a lot of different API keys and you want to make sure that they don't accidentally get committed wherever you hard code them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Hard coding API keys.
Just don't do it.
Only there were a better way.
Only we had a service or a product that would do this. But before we go there,
Oh,
I actually think we have a question. Yay! So, Lounge.
Hi,
What's
Lounge.
the question?
Yeah, so it's from Mike IEEE.
Hi,
Hey, can you guys help me with best practices on OS patching, i.e. regular big fix types of tools, or patching the newly created AMI and then swapping for the real instance?
Got it. Well, we have a few things that one thing we're actually going to cover today is even the detection before the patch.
yeah.
So we will be getting to that later on in the episode. A small ruiner. We're going to be mentioning Nessus and Inspector.
Yes.
Yes. But in addition to that, should we go through Systems Manager maybe a bit?
We can look at Systems Manager. I think I have Systems Manager pulled up right here. Oh, look, it's Systems Manager. Systems Manager has some great little features and functionality for, surprisingly enough, managing systems. Sorry.
It's such a great name.
I know.
Yes.
It is what it is.
Sometimes we don't do acronyms. It's great.
It says exactly what it does. And we actually have this patch manager. It allows for the automation of patching,
Yeah.
which is extremely convenient. You determine a group against that you have a baseline set for. Then it runs in maintenance windows that you define, and it monitors the patch status to ensure compliance,
Yeah.
which is really helpful.
It is.
Having that set up ahead of time can really make patching a much smoother process, and it's pretty flexible.
So if there's any links or blogs that we can add to the chat, we will try
We
to
will do that.
do so
And
to help you out there to give you a pattern to go for it.
Sure. And there is a blog post on Patch Systems Manager, Patch Manager,
Yes.
which if we put into an acronym would be far too long.
I'm trying to see if I can
Yeah,
just pronounce it. And
Anyway.
I don't think I'm going to be successful at it. All right, so we started to allude to the fact that we don't want to save our secrets. We don't want to
Oh,
save
yes.
our passwords in code or our API keys.
Right.
But are you just telling us that we can't do this, or are you going to tell us that there's actually a solution for
There's a
this?
solution.
There's a solution.
Now, I think we touched on creating a secret in a previous episode, mostly because I have a secret here called to delete, which I have not deleted, that I believe we created live. But let's take a look at a different, more fleshed out secret. You'll see here that we've labeled this one Twitch Application Database User Password. And one of the things we did not define when we were creating a secret in our previous demo was rotation configuration.
Yes.
Now, you'll see here that the rotation status is enabled. The interval is set to 30 days. And it uses a Lambda function to rotate it. Now, have we talked about Lambda? Let's talk about Lambda really quickly. So if you're not familiar with it, everyone's on the same page. So Lambda is our event-driven compute service that is designed to work in a functional manner, which was why we called it Lambda.
That one makes sense.
I really like that
Yeah.
title. So you see here, this Lambda function hits this secrets manager DB password rotation. And if you're saying to yourself, man, I don't know Lambda, I've never used it, I have no idea how to do it. Fortunately, in the serverless application repository, which is a part of Lambda, there is a framework for
Yes.
how to do this.
And I will say that Secrets Manager made this makes it really easy for you. So so I was the one who created
Thank you, Yuri.
our nice Twitch database
Very-
password with a rotation.
Very exciting.
And as you're stepping through that, you get to a point where they actually give you the code for the Lambda.
Not only can we reuse code, we're giving people code.
We are just giving people code. But the nice thing is, since it's not something that's behind the scenes, they're giving you Lambda. You have full. We actually can.
Oh yeah, let's take a look at it.
So the nice thing is they create the Lambda, now you can go access it. So let's say you have your own standards for passwords. Again, you want Amazon and Secrets Manager to go through and make sure to do a rotation every 30 days, but you have your own standards for how your passwords are generated for your own compliance purposes. Well, the nice thing is you can go and customize the Lambda that's already created.
Yep.
So it's already going through and it has all the code to generate a password, but the idea is you can customize this to be exactly what you need.
All right, here's the code. And you see we're using the Boto 3 library.
For Python, for you Python users out there.
Yes. We've got a couple of other libraries we're pulling in. We're defining very few things. Here's the handler.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of green text here, which is comments.
They're describing to you what's going on.
That's handy.
I never do that.
Yeah, me neither.
And I just like to write really fancy regex.
That's your comment is really fancy regex.
I mean, that's what my code.
That's
Okay, never
really
mind.
fancy regex. Okay, all right.
hang on.
Well, moving. Let's just go past that.
The whole point is that there's a Lambda that will go through and create your passwords. Secrets Manager will take advantage of this on an every 30-day cycle.
That's great.
And this is great because you can create a password. It can be 20 characters. It can be a mix of lowercase, uppercase.
Sure.
But at some point, somebody's probably writing it down on a post-it note. They're probably taping it to their monitor.
I'm gonna check under the laptop here. And,
I mean, something along those lines. So the idea is rotation can actually be important even if you've
Yeah.
followed every other best practice that's out there.
I guess we are only human.
Yes, but if your password is being rotated every 30 days, do you want to be redeploying out your code and
no.
for this configuration to be, let's see actually what it would look like in your code. What do you have to program to take advantage of Secrets Manager?
Well, fortunately, you set up the demo for that.
I did. That was nice of me.
All right, so here we have another Lambda function called TwitchDB update that Yuri programmed. It essentially it uses the Boto 3 library, and you'll see here we're using the Secrets Manager session and client.
Yep.
So it, checks for that. This is what it looks like in code, but let's actually test this.
Yes. Let's
So-
press test.
Hit the test button.
Now we have to go up to the logs.
Oh no, the logs are right here now.
Oh, look at that.
I know, that's so nice. Look, here's the response. It's in JSON.
It's JSON.
That's convenient.
So the idea is that the information for connecting to RDS in this case, which is our database, all of the credentials are right there, and as the passwords get rotated, they will
Yep.
be updated. So when it comes to logging in and connecting to your database, you can take advantage of these credentials
Which
and
is
make it a
great.
little bit more dynamic.
And here is the log for that, for a secret that is returned from the client.
Yep.
And there it is. I see the password.
Don't worry, we've secured down this. You guys can't do anything with our fancy little tiny micro database that has barely any storage. We weren't going to give you guys that much fun. Sounds like we have another question. What's
Yes.
up?
So from JAL97, when someone eject.js link in your web page, if a user clicks on that link, does your cookie and session go to the website of that link?
So this is
Okay. Trying to parse all that in my head. Apologies.
Yeah. I mean, this might be one of the great things for us to do a follow-up on next time.
I think so.
Yeah. So we'll make sure to have all the follow-up information so that we don't accidentally say something incorrect here.
Right.
Yeah.
The-
It's a really great question.
It is a good question.
Yeah, we always
And
like
a
the
fun
ones.
challenge.
Yes, we like
Which
challenges.
we actually do like challenges.
Yeah.
This is how we roll.
Perfect. So now
Yeah.
we've seen how to take advantage of Secrets Manager.
Sure.
We've seen how to actually use it in our code.
Right.
So in addition to that, did we go through parameter store? We saw systems manager there.
Oh.
But because sometimes we're not just storing super secret things that need rotations and things along those lines, but we have other parameters in our application that we might want to store.
Did you just say we want to store parameters in parameter store? I like it.
It wasn't quite a palindrome.
It wasn't, but it was really close. I like
I
it.
need to figure out a way of making that.
It's so in Systems Manager we have this parameter store. It's great for configuration management. The differences here are pretty obvious when you look at creation of a new secret versus a new parameter. You'll see here when we create a new secret, we've got credentials for databases, API keys, document databases, and all of those give you some form around that. Here you can store a string list, or a secure string.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. The parameter store is very helpful for storing parameters.
Yes, it is. And the nice thing is, I am when it comes to like secrets manager and so on.
You are who? Identity and access management?
Yes.
Yes.
The idea is that you can actually, again, giving the right access to the right things at the right time, you can make sure that your applications are only seeing parameters and secrets that are related to it.
Correct.
So you can lock that down as well.
Yes, which is fantastic.
It is fantastic.
It is actually pretty handy.
Okay, so great. So we went through the whole configuration side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But we did talk about everything else related to all of those, the OWASP top 10,
Mm-hmm.
the CVE list. So there must be easier ways of us making sure that we are in compliance with those vulnerabilities, things like that.
Well, when we deploy code, right, we're logging into thousands of individual machines and copying and pasting the code from our workstation into those machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how we deploy code. If there were a better way to do it, maybe we could check it before pushing it out.
Yeah, like the last thing you want to do is your security testing in production. I mean, you're brave. You have. It
I'm
sounds
not
like
that brave.
you have the best users in the world. it
Right,
sounds
well,
like.
that's helpful.
Yes.
I don't know how brave I am.
So there might be ways of testing.
There might be ways of testing.
For security. So the idea is that there's something that you should look at called static
There are.
application security testing.
Yes.
So, and there are these testing frameworks that are out there that will take care of a lot of everything in the OWASP top 10,
Yep.
along with looking at even some of the vulnerabilities in the CVE.
Why aren't we using that already?
Yeah, and the nice thing is you don't even have to deploy your code anywhere. You just have to build it, or again, you can just look at the source code itself.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, to find these.
So for building code, one of the things that's coming up on our next series episode is that's a thing. Is deploying code securely using CI/CD pipelines.
Yeah. So the idea is like right now we're just telling you that there's something magical out there called static application security testing.
Yep.
SAST, I think, was the other acronym that I saw there.
Yes.
SAST. So yeah, again, static application security testing. But this isn't something. I mean, you can run it
Sure.
once on your code and say, how am I doing right now? But
Perfect.
you are probably going to be going through changes as, again, you have new features, new bug fixes, things along those lines as your application
It's true.
changes throughout time. So we're devoting a whole entire episode around CI/CD and automated testing for many different things, including security.
Well, that's fantastic.
That's all next week.
That's very exciting.
That's going to be.
It'll be an
that's-
excellent episode.
Yes, yes. There's also dynamic security testing.
Oh, dynamic security.
So why would we need this separate from the static?
Things change.
Things change. Maybe you can't figure everything out just by looking at your code, because sometimes you have to look at the environment itself.
You mean you have to play music to hear it? You can't just read it?
Yeah, sometimes you, again, our code doesn't run in isolation from all of the infrastructure that's in front of it
Oh, yeah,
or
there's that.
behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we touched on Inspector in last week's episode. I'm going to pull that up again real quick. so that we can take a look at the inspector thing. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to.
No, it's great.
Um,
So inspector is the idea that it has an agent that runs on your EC2 instance. So when you've deployed out your code to an EC2 instance,
Mhm.
it will look at your OS. It'll
Yep.
look at libraries that are installed and other configuration of your system,
Yep.
and look for common security vulnerabilities there.
Potential security issues.
Potential security
I think you
issues.
might want to look at.
Yeah, it has everything from moderate,
It's
Low,
not so big deal,
medium.
and that's, hair on fire.
probably in red.
For some of us, that's a lot of hair.
Maybe for
Just
both
saying.
of us.
In fact, I was going to say for both of us, actually, it's quite a bit of
I'm
hair.
not sure which one of us has less hair.
I'm not going to, moving on.
That's another Twitch series at some other point in time.
It is.
So the idea, dynamic security testing,
Yeah.
inspector.
Things that you can build, and it gives you the ability to walk through and build a security assessment that then can be run on a schedule you define.
Right, exactly. So the idea is that to use inspector, you would have an agent that is installed on your EC2 instances, and then you would run an inspector, which basically goes out, pings all these instances,
Yep.
says, "How are you guys doing?" And then it'll create a centralized report for you.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
Centralized location for findings.
And so Inspector is Amazon's solution, but there's others in our marketplace and
There
other
are.
third-party tools. Nessus is another example of
Yes. One that I think a fair number of our audience might have heard of.
that. Yes, especially from our government customers.
Yes.
But in addition to that, there are
Oh, yeah.
there are whole companies that have their business model around doing penetration testing, security testing. There's even like SaaS platforms that do this for you. But if you're to do this with Amazon, is there something that we should pay attention to?
Yes. So we have a whole page on this. That the link to it will be put in the Chime, Twitch, chat, whatever that
Yes.
is. I don't know.
What you guys are probably reading when you don't want to look at our faces
Where you're
anymore.
putting those question marks. What are you talking about, Justin?
Exactly.
That's fine.
Yes.
So this is our support policy for penetration testing. There's a few things to know ahead of time.
Mhm.
One of those things is that we have some pre-approved tools, but that does not mean you are limited to only those.
Yep.
You are, however, limited here, and this is a good read. If you can take a look at my screen, the policy regarding use of security assessment tools and services.
What is the? Yes. That's a really small font. There's a lot of words here.
It is a bit of a small font. I've got one highlight, some things highlighted.
Yeah. We should go through that.
Prohibited activities include but are not limited to flooding, protocol flooding, SYN flooding, ICMP flooding, UDP flooding, flooding.
Remember, when you're doing things like penetration testing, we can even talk about performance testing. We'll hit on it a little bit next week as
Yep.
well. But the idea is this is still hitting our infrastructure as AWS, and that's why it is a shared responsibility. We want to allow you to do penetration testing,
We do.
but we want to make sure that we are also protecting our customers,
Everybody.
ourselves, everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
We're in this together.
This is one of those things that if you do something that is prohibited, you might get a not so happy contact from somebody at AWS saying, what's going on here?
Might have some all capital letters. I don't know.
I think actually they're very nice.
They're very
Yeah,
nice?
they are actually very nice.
But they're not so happy, but they're very nice.
I wouldn't say they're that happy when this is going on.
I mean, this is their job, but at the same time, let's be nice to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So read through this. It is a great resource. It's got tips in here on how to do it. There's email contacts if you have questions that you want to talk about this with someone and set it up ahead of time. This is the place to go if you want to do penetration
Yeah.
testing.
And again, there are companies where their whole entire job is to help you think about security. Well, you've got your security departments.
You do. I hope.
Inside your agencies and organizations.
I really hope.
Yes. And they may have their own practices.
Sure. Absolutely.
For this already. If not, then like I said, there are companies that specialize this, and there are SaaS tools.
Yep.
Yeah, and
That-
there's other testing suites that you can look at as well. So again, we need to pay attention to the static
Static
and application security testing. That catches a huge
catches a
chunk.
lot of it.
Yeah, using security agents,
Mhm.
looking at your infrastructure, like Inspector, like
Inspector's a good one.
Nessus.
Nessus.
That
Yeah.
also catches a next tier of vulnerabilities that are going
Absolutely.
on.
Yes.
And then still paying someone or using testing tools that will try to come at your application from the outside, as opposed to trying to test it from the inside.
Right. It's really helpful to know that your door works from both sides. When it's
Yeah.
closed, it's
I mean, I
Sounds
always
close.
would rather just give myself all green check marks and live in la la land with like an ostrich with their head in the sand.
I mean, yeah, I get that, but I don't think our security people would be happy. I know one in particular who might not be so happy if we do that.
Very angry face.
He can.
Yeah.
However, working in coordination with your security people on this is something we've stressed every episode. It's something we will stress every episode because it's DevSecOps.
Right.
Right. Security needs to be in there.
And you need to, as a developer, be
As a
thinking
developer,
about this.
you need to think about it.
Yeah.
Because if you work with them, it'll make your life a little bit easier when it comes time for that security audit to actually sign off on the application going live.
Right. So the idea is we've been doing this series just like what Justin said. Start working with your security officials in your agency, in your organization from the very beginning. Figure out what their security requirements are.
Yep.
We're going through some of this nomenclature with you, so when they say something like security at rest,
Yep.
how are you taking care of that? You don't stare at them and be like, sure, we got this.
Right.
Instead, you can more eloquently say how you've addressed it with encryption for your storage, as an example.
You want those check marks in workbooks, not frowny faces and back to the drawing board.
Yes. And then, so in addition to that, you'll be able to talk to your security officials and say how you've taken care of security
Yep.
within your infrastructure. And now, based off of everything that we went through today,
Yep.
you'll be able to address things along the lines of how did you address
Code
The-
vulnerabilities.
your OWASP top 10 exploits, thinking about bad actors coming through trying to take advantage of your application.
Yeah, they don't really like the no one is going to do anything bad because we have great users.
I mean, you seem to be one of the few people I've ever known that can say that.
With a straight face, that's fair.
That with a straight face, sure, it was very straight. So again, going through everything that we went through today.
Yep.
What are some major exploits that you have to worry about?
SQL injection and injection of any sort, right?
Yeah, well really, think about just two lists.
Two lists.
Two lists that you have to pay attention to.
What was the top 10?
OWASP top 10.
CVE.
Yeah, common vulnerabilities and exposure list, which has thousands
Bajillions.
of lines in it. But to take care of the OWASP top 10 and the CVE, things to take care of,
Mhm.
static application security testing,
I like it.
dynamic application security testing. For the
Sounds pretty
dynamic
cool.
side of things, for the static one, again, next week we will show you how to incorporate this into your CI/CD pipeline. But now you'll know the why behind it.
That's great.
Yeah. When it comes to the dynamic application security testing,
This is probably something best done and decided in coordination with a larger overall policy for your organization. So you might not have the decision making on this, but knowing what the decision is and knowing how they got there and being informed of the conversation can help you do your job better as a developer.
right, exactly. And then, again, highlighting that always work with your security team
Always.
from the very beginning, not when you're about to
Yes.
go to production.
Don't test in production.
He took his glasses off.
There's a GIF apparently of that. I've been GIFed.
Yeah, and I was just laughing.
Yeah, no, but that's fair. That's pretty common.
Right, exactly. So, next week,
Next week,
we have fun stuff coming up.
we do. CI/CD pipelines
Yeah.
are
So-
very exciting.
I mean, they kind of are.
They actually are really cool.
Yeah, because, I mean, to go through all of that coding testing,
I mean, no human deploying code?
yeah, or
I got a lot of late nights I'd like back.
or all of that manual testing that you have to do over.
Oh yeah, over and over
Yeah.
and over
Yeah.
and over again. As we wrap up, are there any questions or comments? This is a good time for them.
Yes.
We've got a few minutes left. We have questions that we're taking forward.
Yes, we do.
So we do have one kind of open-ended question
Sure.
from Ali1 Vegata, who just passed their associate cert, so congrats.
Well done.
They were wondering, is there anything you'd recommend them studying up on?
Oh man.
Specifically?
So if you're not already taking a look at our security blog regularly, it's a great location. There's a lot of articles written by very well-informed solutions architects on a variety of topics from compliance, security, and securing your application. So that's a great place to start and look for resources. OWASP, which we've put, is also a fantastic place to go and get lost in for like 3 days.
Yeah, don't come out.
You come back after
Yeah.
that, but
At some point in time, I would say always be paying attention to the latest trends and things that are coming out.
absolutely.
Our products and services. So in addition to, you already mentioned our blog, which
did.
can go through and describe to you many reference architectures that are out there.
Mhm.
But paying attention to our latest releases of products and services and the trends that are going around are going to be important. I'm also going to encourage, based off of where you want to concentrate on
True.
In your life, specific to your role
In your life.
in where you are at right now,
Uh-huh.
there are probably additional certifications
There are.
that you should maybe explore
Sure.
that'll make you even more of an expert in specific areas.
Sure.
Like, as an example, we have a developer associates and professional.
We do have a developer associates and a DevOps Pro.
Yep.
We have a solutions architect pro.
Yes.
These are all great core things to have, and then there are specialty ones.
Yes.
That big data and I believe machine learning is out there.
Yeah.
I know somebody who passed that recently.
Me too. I wonder if they're the same. I don't know.
I
We'll-
changed like no. Maybe.
We'll have to figure that out
Well,
later.
it's just, yeah, I'm sure they don't care.
Privacy, we will keep all of that private. But the idea is you can always be paying attention to trends,
Yes.
but at some point it's good to actually specialize.
It is.
And it's good to go deep in some specific areas. So again, it'll be probably more specific to what you're doing. You can always feel free to even chat where you are, which direction you're going, and we can tailor our answer a little bit more to you there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We probably have
We probably have
for
time for like
me.
a very quick question.
Yeah, otherwise we will be saying our sign-offs very soon.
Okay.
All right.
So next week, same bat time.
And
That's a really old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same time. Same
same
Twitch channel.
Same. I wish it was like a Batman thing.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
But then
But-
we need like a bat signal, and I don't want copyright.
But you know when they would do the continuation, except for I would always watch them because there were 2 half-an-hour episodes.
And they always put them back
They
together.
would put them back to back because I would only watch them on reruns.
Right.
So maybe we could do
It
that.
wasn't really around in the 60s.
We'll think about better cliffhangers other than next week, CICD. Dun dun dun.
What does it mean?
How can it be used?
Yes. Should you be continuously clicking deploy? Is that what CICD means?
Should, should you have manual testing people who are out there rerunning every single form field that you have in your application? Seeing
I mean,
how-
if you really wanted to do that, we could talk about how to do that.
Hey,
I just think that that might not be the best use of people's time.
it's a great retirement plan for me. Yeah.
That works. Whatever works. On that note,
Is it hat time?
I think so. I don't know how much more life these hats have, but I'm gonna put the hat on, and this is how we're gonna end.
We are. And just like stare at the screen.